Thank you for being here. We're excited to hear from you and hear some of the visions, some of the strategies, some of the concerns, some of the issues, and especially the requirements that we have going forward in support of the men and women that we have out there.
Absolutely.
Jay, I want to thank you for being here, representative of the industry. One of the things I want to let you know off the top of my head really quickly is we're going to challenge you as a representative industry to do as much as you can, especially in the way of forward-leaning, looking what's coming, the vision, the requirements, and things of that nature.
Thank you for having us, sir.
So it's good to have you all here. So Sunil, let's kick it off very quickly. Earlier we were talking about AI, machine learning, things of that nature. What do you see are the biggest challenges right now relative to AI incorporation into what we're doing in the field?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me. And so I currently have two roles within CBP. I'm the Chief Technology Officer. I'm also the Acting Chief Data Officer. In fact, Trang Tran is our Deputy CDO right there, sitting right there, who's pretty much the workhorse for our org. We're about to hire a CDO full-time, and that'll help because I just cannot do two jobs. It's just too much work. So I think Chief was right on. I tell you, when he was talking about it, the AI ML, if you look at generally within the industry, right? Every web page you go to within the industry, they're talking about AI ML, right? I mean, I think the next thing AI ML probably start cooking dinner for you also. You know what I'm saying? So it's a highly, it's a very important subject, right? Mm-hmm. And it means different things to different people, right? So what we are seeing is, like the chief said, it's extremely important. The agents and officers in the field, for us, for our perspective, they shouldn't have to know what exactly, what this underlying thing is doing, right? We have to provide them tools and integrated tools so that they don't have to worry about learning 8 different things that the chief said. So AI machine learning in general, in my view, is taking a bunch of data which is already there within CBP and making sense of it, right? Not only making sense of it, but also trying to do some predictive components within AI ML, things like that is, I think, where I think we should be going. So first of all, I would say the most important thing is education, I would say, number one, because the officers and agents, as I mentioned, don't have to know exactly what's going on as long as the tool works for them. And also, when you start using the buzzwords across with them, especially in the field, saying, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? There's no need for this kind of stuff. From our perspective, we're trying to make that layer a little bit easier for them from that perspective. The second component, what we are seeing is challenges is, this for the industry in general, I think, please, if you can help us in this area, is the data itself. How do you, we are finding Jeremy Ogletree, who's going to talk next year, how do you take the data, how do you tag it, annotate data? It's a lot of currently the way we do it is all a very manual process, right? How do we do the next level where you automate some of these things? As you know, there are multiple ways to look at machine learning data. There are 2 ways generally we deal with. One is called the supervised learning. One is the unsupervised learning, right? So majority of the work, what we work on is supervised learning, because we train the data, and the data after it gets trained, we input the data and do work on that. So those 2 areas, I would say, is kind of important that we understand how do we annotate data, how to make things a little bit easier for us. It's a manual process, or even now, believe it or not. Okay, wow. Yeah, it's still a manual process, and there are companies who are getting better at this, especially large cloud companies. Believe it or not, you know where the data goes for tagging in the world? Nepal.
Nepal?
Yes. They are a big country for data tagging, wow. Believe it or not. We found out the hard way because we first don't know how about data is not leaving the US. So that's how we found out. But there are companies who are doing this today, so I would say that's a very important area where we are concentrating a lot on. The data tagging, data annotation is kind of important. That's how you build your data models, right, as to what exactly we're doing. And the third component I would say, which is also challenging for us, is in general that how we are accepting the data from various parts of the government is also extremely challenging, right? And we are finding that also important for integration, as Chief Ortiz said. I think Chief Ortiz could have given my talk here because he was exactly right, the challenges he was talking about. That's exactly what's going on in the field. And these are some of the challenges we have, sir, because it's end of the day, I look at it, data is the new code, I call it. Data is new code. We're talking about coding languages, right? Data is the new code now because everything is based on data. Everything we do across the board within CBP is data. So from that perspective, it's critical that the AI ML component, rather than using as a buzzword, need to come to us with solutions. Yeah. That's what we're looking for. Solutions we talked about, how do we take communication, 2022, you cannot have communication issues. Right? How do we make those things easier? How do we make a single view, for example, across the board for the agents, right? Those are things we're looking at. And we are, so there's a lot of challenges within CBP from data perspective because that's the size who we are. We are close to about 17 petabytes of data we store. All data is not stored by tech guys like us, right? For OIT is actually owned by the mission owners like Chief Ortiz and OFO and AMO, right? So you think about all the data we are collecting from that perspective. We're the only agency who has our own Air Force and own Navy. Yeah. It's a fact, right? And look at the data. Earlier, we were not using some of these components before because they were doing their stuff and we were doing the IT stuff. Not the case anymore, sir. The marriage between the operation technology and information technology is blurring now. It's all one now. Yeah. So because of that, it's AI ML is going to play a role in this, but there are challenges.
Got it. Okay. Jay, you've got these. You got to solve those.
Yeah. So again, thanks for having me here today. I'm happy to represent industry. The chief mentioned a lot of important pieces of why AI ML can be impactful, and Sunil's mentioning a lot as well. Artificial intelligence is not easy. We're talking a lot in industry and with government and academia all about AI ML. And I think the first thing we have to do is step back and understand that that's the second piece to solving the problem. The first part is the data problem, and Sunil mentioned that. We need to make sure when any agency is undertaking these tasks and techniques to create impactful machine learning, that we do it in a way, at least we believe the most impactful way is focused on utility and usability. So what I mean by that is, first of all, utility. What does that particular algorithm or that particular model or that particular analytic bring to the fight for the operator? What problem does it solve? So Chief mentioned adding something else to the tactical belt. Does it really solve a problem, or is it just there because it's something that we decided to do? We need to focus on the things that work in an applied setting and actually make a difference. Then the other piece is usability, because most operators are not data scientists. They might not be technical. They might not be coding. So how do we put these technologies, take them to the edge, put them in the hands of the operators, and make it usable in an environment that is point and click or drag and drop? So abstract all the tough stuff that Sunil's teams are doing and other teams are doing to build these models and aggregate the data. I think those are two things that we really have to focus on. And the other piece is the why. Why are we doing AI ML, right? Sure, it's mandated, and we all talk about that. But the real reason is to reduce cognitive load on our operators. We live in a data-infused world, and that's growing, exponentially by the minute. The best operators, the best officers might be tired, might be overloaded, might be stressed in an environmental situation. So anything we can do to deliver them insights rapidly at the edge to reduce that cognitive load so they can make better decisions is what I think is important.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you, both of you hit on something that is critically important. I actually wrote this down because I read this a long time ago. Data. The tremendous amount of the data that our operators are dealing with today. What does it mean? What do we want it to mean? And wherein does the value lie? Given the velocity, the veracity, the volume, and the validation requirements in order to bring that value. Yeah. Now, I wanted to say that before asking this following question. One of the biggest challenges that we had coming together as DHS, when we melded all the agencies, was different ways of doing business, different computer systems, different coding. We were just completely different, tremendously different. Data, structured, unstructured, distributed data. CBP, I believe I'm correct here, is the executive agent for 28 other agencies throughout the United States government.
Yeah.
28 other agencies.
Yeah.
Wherein lies the challenges on that data, whether it's distributed, structured, unstructured, or whatever else descriptive there is out there?
So I think the way I like to answer that is you're 100% correct, right? We are ingesting data for every format possible now, right? So initially, the data, especially on the passenger side, cargo side, which is traditional structured data, right? You're coming in, filling out certain things, and then you're moving on, right? So now that part's completely changed because of the unstructured component has dramatically grown. If you look at the ratio of the data, structured, unstructured, the growth is all unstructured data right now because you are like from images to videos to you just name it. That's where the growth is. So for the structured for us has been very static for us. Number of passengers coming in and cargo coming in the United States, of course, is grown. Cargo has grown a lot last year because of COVID. But in general, structured data has been kind of consistent, and we know how to deal with that. But the unstructured component, where the challenges are, right? And we are seeing that across the board. And from our perspective, the other component what we are seeing is, as you mentioned, the various agencies, right, we talk to. Trade partners, for example, right? They send EDIs to us, but we're trying to get away from EDIs because we want to have a more modern way to communicate with them, integrate with them, and giving them a nice APIs to deal with. API stands for Application Program Interface, in case anybody wants to know what APIs are. So that has changed because the trade partners know we want to stay with EDIs because they're making money off that, right? And I completely understand. But we are including large trade partners. We are trying really, really hard to modernize some of those things because the more efficient way we exchange data and input data for us to Chief's Ortiz view of one view across the board for agent, not 8 different views. That's what we can do because if we have a common standard across the board from data perspective, it'll be much easier. Other thing what's happening, sir, is super important now. Earlier, even 5 years ago, technologies available to read distributed databases kind of existed, but they were okay. You know what I'm saying? I come from the tech sector myself. I used to work with Sun Microsystems. I was one of the first guys to use distributed databases long time ago. So those that they were just coming on board those. But now, it's a common feature now. We don't want to move data anywhere. Like Chief said, one view for everybody. But the way we do that is not moving not moving data between systems, leaving the where it is, and run distributed queries, which we just talked about. So those queries can do your analysis, your AI machine learning model will be easier, you can train the data a lot easier. So that's where we are going. So and we are hoping that we are very excited about the future because we are working with some of the cloud providers as we speak right now to exactly work on that. One example I'll give you quickly on this. We have a new system called Unified Processing, which is a blue-green system, and that's an excellent example of what we have done. We have a good backend from a data perspective and a good front end. So Chief mentioned about a single mobile device. We are a mobile agency. Everybody, office and agents are all mobile. So if you're not doing mobile, from industry perspective, please keep in mind, we are not helping them. So every component, what we have from CTO office, we have made it very, very clear. Any new project gets approved has to have a mobile component to it across the board. So that's why from data perspective, we are trying to see that should be completely agnostic where the data is, what form it is, where it is, as long as we can pull data out of that. But we are definitely telling the industry partners and our other government partners across the board that please work with us to modernize some of these the way we do things. So we are an API first agency. That's where we are. And everything across the board is just going to be an API across the board. So from that perspective, we are ingesting, I would say, as I mentioned, 17 petabytes of data we have. And you see some of the numbers, what we process every day, number of passengers, cargo. Last year, we brought in $105 billion of tariffs last year. You can imagine how much money that is. By the way, we don't see a penny of that, so don't expect us. So everything goes to Treasury for that. We don't see a penny of that one, all right? But number of passengers we process every year, and cargo, of course. The lifeline of United States trade goes through CBP, as you know. So it's huge for us. So we do across the board. One thing good about CTO office is I see everything across the board. just not only Border Patrol, but AMO, Office of Trade, OFO across the board. So I think DX Sabatino will be here today, I believe. She'll be talking. Work with her very closely. She's a big data person. I was with her in Singapore. Same issue there, data sharing. And data sharing is also a big one that Chief talked about. And again, different formats of data. As long as we can make it uniform across the board to a certain extent, is where we are going. So we'll see where it goes. So, but I tell you, data standardization is I'm pushing that a lot within the
Makes
CBP.
sense, makes
Yeah.
sense. So Jay, as an operator, I should say an ex-operator, one of the things that I think is critically important to this discussion and the challenges by unstructured data relates to what I refer to as open source. Basically, there's a lot of bad actors hiding in plain sight. But given the social media capabilities, the media overall, there's a lot of information out there, but I think I'm correct in saying that's unstructured data. So how do you bring it into play so that the operators are making the connectivity between the structured, the unstructured, the intel, the open source, and everything else that creates that much higher fidelity picture?
Yes, sir. It's a great question. So what you're talking about there is essentially data fusion. So you're taking multiple types of data, structured, unstructured, semi-structured. You're taking, in some cases, many cases, law enforcement sensitive, some cases, IC community data or DoD data that's fed to you, as well as the open source component, which is a very important component, and fusing it all together on a common operating picture. But again, you have to solve, I go back to the data. You have to solve the data problem first. So you need to make sure your source systems or your systems that you're going to do these analytics on are interoperable. They need to be able to normalize data across many different types. I don't think that all the agencies that we deal with, both nationally and internationally, we're not going to get them to one particular type. So it's about making sure that we can extract information from all of those different types. So be agnostic to that, have an open architecture, and then be able to fuse that data and then use analytics. So I have the pleasure of working across Homeland Security, the DoD, the intelligence community, and everyone is looking for that same fusion technology. Everyone is looking for that magic bullet to be able to take all this data, fuse it together, and create some type of course of action recommendation or decision support, whatever that might be. And I think the way you get there is first having a robust data ingest pipeline, a way to accept all of the data, and a way to secure and protect all of that data. And then I think one of the things we're finding a lot of utility with is moving towards attribute-based access controls, which is something that not a lot of people have been talking about yet, but it's more and more. So
Would you repeat that again? What is it?
Attribute-based access controls. So moving to a data-centric architecture where each data object itself is tagged at its finest granular level with information about what that data is, so that it can be disseminated easier and more appropriately across multiple networks. So, for example, a DoD or intelligence community example, let's say they have some pertinent information to something happening in, a border region, and they want to share information, or you would want them to share information with you. Very often, I would imagine it's hard to get some of that information because the intelligence community is protecting sources and methods, or they're protecting different types of tradecraft that's very sensitive to them. By tagging this data at that finest granular level, they can choose on that data object what to share and what not to share. And they can pass that information faster between organizations or agencies. And I think that is where data is headed in the future if we all want to reach data centricity, where we're focusing on enriching data and data fidelity. And then you need things like governance, and you need auditability, and you need to understand source authority. So really, whatever systems you're using to build these fusion technologies, you need to be able to trace back. So I came out of the IC, and everything is about, that's great that you can put a dot on my map. Prove it to me. Prove to me that that's what it is. Validate it for me. Tell me where that data came from, all the way back to that original source. And I think that's very important going forward. That's going to go a long way in things like eliminating bias, creating greater confidence in the actual AI/ML models that are out there, and towards explainability and interpretability of how these computer algorithms are making decisions overall.
Okay, very good.
Sunil, can I just add one
Please,
thing to that?
please.
Is that, see, this is where, the challenges we are seeing. I think Jay is 100% correct. Some of the data quality and how we ingest data is super important, right? But the challenge is, like traditional way, what we've been doing before for a long time, that's completely changing, right? The edge computing for us, especially in CBP side, has completely changed the way we do business, right? I mean, Chief was talking about how we are ingesting data, and data is in a different format, which we just talked about, right? It's not only that, right? The AI machine learning, the topic is AI machine learning in general. What we are finding is, its challenges, where do we process the AI machine learning models, right? Do we do it at the edge? Do we bring it in? This is a everyday discussion with us, right? But here's what has changed, right? The cloud companies now are providing that kind of options, providing options to us. From industry perspective, please look at that. Those are solutions we want to bring, not a piece of, hey, this is what is there, we can integrate with this. No, the whole solution from end to end, what it look like for us, where we are capturing a picture or image within the southwest border or somewhere else. What happens, the whole life cycle of the data is what we are interested in, right? This is where we need help. How do we bring it in? We have done some recent POCs. XT Singleton's here. We have done some POC with his team recently. Some pretty interesting work, and we have found some interesting use cases because of that, right? The reason we were able to do that is the partnership again on the industry side, right? So, and also working with our operators from the Border Patrol side. So we want to continue doing that, and that's where I think is everything is going right now.
Right, right. So I was going to wait a little longer to ask this question, but both of you have talked to it. And Sunil, you started off by one, mobile.
Yes, sir.
If industry's looking at supporting CBP, mobility is absolutely critical. Two, edge computing.
Yes, sir.
Edge computing, that is critically important, especially by the type of work that the operators do. So edge computing right now is basically what is evolving, moving forward. Let me take it to the extreme mobile edge computing, whereby in a endpoint, we have the ability to actually to integrate, correlate, assess, aggregate, observe, orient, decide, and act.
Yes.
In that endpoint, okay? Is it possible? I know the answer to that, but I want to hear it from you. Is it possible? And by the way, the answer is, I think, yes. How far away are we from it?
Yeah.
And security related to that.
Yeah.
Zero trust architecture and everything else that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
So, Sunil?
So 100%, it's a great question, sir. And the thing is, technically, absolutely, right, possible, right? So I think where the challenges are, I think with respect to data sharing, who can share with what.
There you go.
Right? And some of the access control we talked about earlier, right? So I think technically we can do this. There's no question about that. But end of the day, within CBP itself, we have sometimes challenges sharing data, right? Let alone from other agencies and even foreign partner countries, right? But devices are there, and these mobile devices we have these days, attack device, what Chief mentioned, we use that a lot, and it's growing it's growing as to what we can do with that. And again, the whole point is, sir, that trying to give single view
Right.
to the end user, right? See, reporting a thing, you shouldn't have to worry about that as long as they're inputting something in the one place. I was at one of the posts, and there was an apprehension. I was there, and we used this new unified processing mobile device. It's called mobile intake. Within 5 seconds, we came to know where the person is from, and the history. 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So very impressive, and our agents and officers, they're so professional. They do such a good job. I was proud to be a CBP employee that day.
Right. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I would absolutely agree. The technology is there. I think in order to go faster and to innovate more, we need to start looking at policy. There are a lot of policy issues that prevent, as Sunil was saying, in some cases, data sharing. There's also lots of considerations around, privacy and human rights and There's a lot of issues with AI/ML. It's it's associated with the term bias all the time. So there's folks who are wary of these technologies, and I think sometimes that inhibits our ability to complete a mission or solve a mission. Right. So I will tell you that I've worked with teams that have wearable computers where they have essentially a heads-up display, and they can do passive interrogation and look at things like people's microexpressions to determine whether they're being deceptive, or look at a crowd of people and determine if someone is printing or carrying a weapon underneath their shirt. So the technology's there and definitely can be processed at the edge and give operators instantaneous feedback that can be about mission survivability or solving a problem for them. But the policies haven't caught up with the technology yet. And I think that's another way we need to frame it and look at it.
Got it. So I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to open it up for questions from the audience here. So to both of you, Sunil, you talked about the data, the trust, the sharing concerns, the policy. I used to use the word firewalling. Now I think the term of art is actually zero trust architecture.
Yes, sir, yeah.
Zero trust architecture in the situation that we're at now, the MEC, the mobile edge computing, and especially on the extreme mobile edge computing is going to be critically important.
Yeah.
Where are we on that?
So CBP is, I'm happy to announce, zero trust is part and parcel of what we do on a daily basis. See, zero trust has always been there. From tech perspective, I've been doing this for a long time. It's always been there, right? It has changed. It has changed because now we are looking at these edge devices as an entry point now, right? Mm-hmm. So humans, like we carry PIV cards, right? Work, everywhere else to log into systems. Same thing we are doing for devices now. If you're a device, mobile device or any other device, camera device, anything like that, they also have some kind of a digital footprint. We want to know who exactly which camera is getting on board. Mm-hmm. So because of that, the zero trust has moved away. But what I call it vertical and horizontal. So you don't trust anyone, but you verify everything.
Yeah,
that's what we do now. It used to be trust but verify, no longer the case. We say don't trust and verify. I'm saying don't trust anybody, right? And that's what it is, both internal threats and external threat. That's why vertical and horizontal zero trust is what we are working on. There are multiple companies we work with. I'm not sure if you guys were on we had the industry day we had last week for ESB, Enterprise Small Business. So please, if you guys are small businesses talking to, please do look at that, because we are looking at upcoming next generation companies to work with us.
Okay, Jack?
So Jay's view of the world, we get to zero trust by doing three things: protecting the data at rest, protecting the data in transit or the data in motion, and protecting the data in use. And so that's really the triad for zero trust. And then having systems and tools in order to cross-reference and check anyone who's trying to access that data. The good news is we talked earlier about the attribute-based access controls. Mm-hmm. That gives you a zero trust foundation.
Got it.
Because you are able to protect every query going into any particular system and take that query, run your analysis on it, but then check before that response goes out to whoever it's going out to against identity, credentialing, access management systems that are already in place to say, does this person have the credentialing, the need to know, the read-in, whatever it might be, to access that particular piece of data? And if they don't, that data is redacted from whatever response they're going to get from those queries. So I think industry and our government partners have mostly solved data at rest. I think data in motion is also, they're doing a great job solving that. And data in use, that's that other piece. You need to come up with cryptographic protections like homomorphic encryption and other tool sets that you can wrap your queries in to protect the data while it's being queried against. And I think that if you can put those three pieces together, in addition to having those tools with that fine granular control and that data-centric environment, I really believe that you meet or exceed all the zero trust standards.
Okay. Questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I was just curious, is there any talk of CBP coming up with a data strategy and getting like a chief data officer? And then I was wondering if you could talk about specific problem sets with machine learning AI you want to focus on, and then if you could also touch on how you would access that data. Would it be like a sandbox, a DevOps space? And
Sure.
I know that's a lot, but
No. I think I first the answer to your first question, yes and yes, right? Because we are getting a CDO. We have made a selection. We are just waiting for a few more signatures, and the deputy CDO sitting right next to you there, Trang Tran. So she is, she's my right hand, doing a lot of CDO work right now. From AI ML perspective, we have Jeremy Ogletree there, the director of the Invent team. Work very closely with them. We have created what is called Center of Innovation for AI ML. Is runs under the CTO office. We are partnered with Jeremy. Jeremy's an awesome guy. He gives me a lot of money, so I have to be very nice to him all the time. so Jeremy is an awesome partner, and we work with him very closely. So from data AI ML perspective, as I mentioned, right? So we are trying to figure out what makes sense where, right? The problem, what happens is a lot of agencies, including CBP, we try and boil the ocean, right? So we are trying to take these pieces at a time, which project makes sense, right? I'll give an example. This is a known thing. It's called non-intrusive inspection, NII. So what we are looking at, when trucks coming in the United States, what do we do with that, right? I mean, there are certain AI ML algorithms you can run through that to take advantage of technologies available right now, right? That'll be a great example. The other example, wherever data is involved, wherever data is involved, you can have some kind of AI machine learning component. Like Chief said, just because you're doing something doesn't mean everything is AI machine learning. It may not be required, right? If you predictive stuff you're doing in certain cases. We do have a data strategy which we just published about 6 months back. It's an official document signed by our current commissioner, who used to be deputy commissioner those days, and it's an official document. So that document we are taking across all of CBP and enforcing that. Because the one thing I have is a power of purse. I don't sign things off if you're not compliance. That I have. Yeah. So because of that, uniformity, I know like Jay mentioned, all data you ingest is very tough to get exactly the same, but there's certain open standards available, right? In every standard, there's open standards. As long as you meet those standards, I think it'll make life for everybody. End of the day, I told my team, only the one thing matters. The agents and officers in the field. If we're not helping them, we're not doing our jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So one more question very quickly, and we have to go. Go ahead. I'm already getting the hook over here.
Thank you. Chris Arroyo with Datadog. Thank you all for participating on the panel. One question I have, I've talked to other government customers that have looked at citizen development. In regards to AI and ML, are you thinking about perhaps citizen development in the context of algorithms and contributing to the agency? Thank you.
So yeah, so low code, no code. If you are talking from that perspective and creating applications based on that, like the chief said, and so you also know some of the agent officer, Jeremy and his team. There's very, very smart people who are actually border agents, gun carrying agents, super smart guys, right, and gals. So they want to work in creating some of these things you talked about, right? Hey, I want to delve into robotic process automation, for example. RPA is a good example. I want to develop some bots on my own, see what we can do with that. Create some analytic predictive models on our own so that let me see how I can do this. But they know the mission better than anybody else. They deal with this every day, right? Mm-hmm. So absolutely we encourage that. We do that a lot. But again, end of the day, right, their job is, in the field and doing other things, as long as they have a good device to work with. Absolutely, we do support that, and we do have multiple agents who we work with, multiple OFO officers we work with. In fact, I was at AMO in Riverside. There are some pretty smart agents doing some pretty cool AI ML component. As you know, what AMO does, right? They have the AMOC. I was at AMOC, and they look at every flying object within the United States, right? They're keeping a track of that. You should see some of the things they're doing. This is all may not be based on low code, no code application, but they understand enough that we are trying to, like as an agency, we'd like to get there, right? But there are other challenges it comes in. But I tell you, RPA is a good example. So I think I talked in my previous talk during the industry day. RPA is a good one. Please work with us on RPA. because that gives you, like what you mentioned, right? I can create my own bot. Let me do my work the way I want it across what I'm trying to look at. It makes sense? Okay.
Okay, Megan, we should have allotted about 4 hours for this panel. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
you,
Really
sir.
appreciate it.
Please join me in thanking our panel.